need to know versus do I care if they know. I've noticed with communication that there seems to be a rule in place. When asked a question by others, the internal question between mind and soul appears to be, does this person need to know? This limits what you reveal. After all, few people need to know anything. For myself, it's do I care if they know? While I think it is preferable since it cuts down on the drama that you will endure, it can't be a one-size-fits-all rule either. Revealing too much is not only leaving you exposed to those that will harm you, but likely runaway people that assume you're needy. The ideal of taking a few days of conversation leading to many misunderstandings seems far too pointless for me. If a person might reject me, I'd prefer they do it soon before I get too attached. If you fear telling them something, there is two reasons. You see what you're doing as wrong and should change it. I doubt this. Or you want a relationship with them so bad you fear rejection. I would suggest the more times you censor yourself with that thought, you might be fearing the rejection. Something about them is telling you it's possible. Ask yourself, is this something that is fundamental to your character? If you are seeking an intimate relationship, then it's best to get it out up front. Face the fear. I'd suggest, depending on the closeness of family, the same rule should apply. Except you should consider the age. After all, before society's arbitrary age of maturity, parents have been known to discard their children. Only you can decide if it's safe to reveal. Just remember, if you choose not to, the day you choose, or have it revealed by accident by others or yourself, you made the choice. They could have been able to adapt. It is fear that made you not seek the answer. You must now grant them a level of time to deal with the conflicting feelings of seeing a face that was of a loved one they just lost, while needing to get to know the real you that you denied them. It must be disconcerting to see a face of someone they once knew and realize they never knew. They need time to realize you haven't changed all that much. Overall, I prefer do I care if they know. Yet understand the need for some boundaries. I realized what I needed was a way to assign a value for each person. When I considered this, I was disturbed to realize it already existed. This implies somewhere along the line humanity understood. Yet, while the spectrum existed, it no longer had a real purpose. Only habit, a remote understanding of the need, left the spectrum in place. But many people fail to realize it could be used and why it existed at all. Acquaintance, friend, best friend, intimate relationship. Those are the words we use often. And while we know it a few times, we tend not to use it from the perspective of protecting our needs. The need of safety of the body, security of the mind, that there is some stability in the relationship, and the sanity which is infected of your human trinity, if both of those or one of those is constantly violated. Family is a special circumstance. I'd place them at the same level of intimate, yet often that's not the best place. They must be managed. Same as a friend, someone you would choose, except for these you can't get rid of as easy. Some can be handled at the best friend level, friend or even acquaintance. I do not suggest putting them at an intimate relationship, since often they don't even want to know all that you know. The same is true for a spouse you've had children with. I'd suggest, since you can't get rid of them completely, you place them at an acquaintance level. They must be managed, since the child must have some access to them, but they don't need any access beyond what's needed for the children. The question, does this person need to know? is a question to ask for acquaintances. Clearly, they need to know the least. It's often used like a wall, but we call it a boundary. Boundaries allow access. Walls deny all access. Clearly, does this person need to know will stop even friends from ever getting to know you well enough to avoid chaotic times when there's misunderstandings. Disagreements will begin to happen very often, and you will never have a successful, intimate relationship with this wall. Intimate relationships must have the most access. You are attempting to unify two language of perceptions into a unified language. After all, the fundamentals of your language will be your family. And if that's chaotic, it'll be worse. Something your parents should have done before a child is born, but often is not, is the unification of their language of perception. Since there is not a translator, you must learn through communication and trial and error. If the words seem to be at odds with the behavior, you will need to ask. Ask any translator. They will tell you that at times one language has one word, while another has many words with slightly different meanings. A language of perception is much the same. With learned behavior patterns, certain words will have a higher value. Others will trigger a more emotional, possibly violent response. If they will not communicate, you are in danger of shutting down. In the misunderstanding, what you said last triggered them. Must be the problem. I'd suggest before doing this, ask yourself, would a sane person have that level of a response? If you would not, likely a sane person would not. And since I assume you think the person's sane, there must be a reason. Even if they will not communicate, at least armed with this, you can decide if the relationship is worth keeping. Another possibility, while they do not communicate, sometimes you can catch a pattern, a phrase that will tell you this is not about you at all, or anything happening today. It's in the past. It's learned behavior that was triggered that is causing the swing. Might have even been triggered 3 or 4 days before that. I know that from experience, since I suffered PTSD. Do not attempt to explain it to them. You can't change them. And few will appreciate you exposing something they clearly fear to have known. They might lash out with words or turn violent. The reason I mention this is if you choose to attempt managing the relationship, you will need to protect your needs, safety of body, security of mind, that will need predictability and the sanity of your human trinity that will be infected if you start to doubt yourself. A violation of those first two will infect your own trinity. They might change. They must choose to. I think it unlikely, but it's up to you. Just realize you will have to constantly challenge yourself. To avoid shutting down to such a degree, you lose self-confidence, self-esteem, self-worth. You have free will. If you can identify a word or a phrase. One person I dealt with had a bit of narcissism. Seemed to be gaslighting. I felt I was being trained. Yet I'd gone through this before and lost myself. It took me a long time to get back. I also learned that often people say, "I'm sorry," having no idea what the other person thinks you're sorry about. I will tell you this, not one person that uses those words are sorry for the words they said. So, I needed to know, who could possibly avoid crossing the boundary without understanding what it was that we apologized for? He was satisfied. I ended up having to go through text messages that started the problem. Nowhere was the phrase he mentioned. He just kept saying it was fine. I'd apologized and everything was fine. It was rather frustrating. Then he said I'd said it 4 times. I soon heard that many other times. I set him off. A level of insecurity I did not understand. This was someone that had no reason to be insecure, yet in intimate relationships, he was insecure of 2 things. This started my questioning how this is possible. If I had the knowledge of those words, I then understood anytime those two topics came up, I could disown the blame. And that was something I couldn't change, just learn to cope with. Question is could I cope with it? That needed to be learned, and his narcissism ended up getting in the way too much. People are not perfect, however. You must decide if you can manage the problem. Having made the decision, you must remember to notice the signs that you are feeling the need to shut down or hide things in some form of a closet or a box. Once you see this, you must leave. They are incapable of a relationship with you. At some level, they must understand your self-esteem must be their priority as well. You can't make things work if they have no interest in meeting you halfway. On the other hand, they might violate one of your needs. This would be the point to remember you assigned them a value. They did not earn it or request it. Even if they ask for intimate relationships, that doesn't mean you all have the same definition. Since you are placing them at the same level as your own needs, it would be best to lower them down to the next level. Therefore, I chose to add best friend. And understand, I'm talking as far as your needs are concerned. The point being, you are only denying them access to your needs. You can still allow them benefits without endangering what you need for safety and security. The relationship hasn't ended. It's just been limited. This is for your mind and soul to understand. It is not necessary to announce it to them or others. The reality is, we are flawed, and while they might have violated a need, it does not mean they can't learn a lesson. You must decide how many times you allow them to hurt you, mentally or physically. In understanding your need for safety and security, then all you're endangering is your wants and desires. That at least only offers a loss, not the need to repair your self-worth. It's not a setback. Parents have a similar problem shaping a child's behavior. I believe the Trinity not offers a clue to just how long it takes to decide if the behavior is a pattern that will not change, or the person is one of the few capable of valuing you enough to earn back what they threw away. After the third time, the rule, I say, is going to be in place. After this, they will do it again and again. It will be very hard to get them to challenge it, since you never had worth enough in their eyes. They were indifferent to you. Restricting access soon will reveal the pattern. They had no intention of showing you until after they got what they wanted. If they are denied access for too long to your needs, and that's all they care about, then they will do one of two things. Leave in disgust, showing they always intended to do this, or throw a tantrum. Hear the words, "Judge me for who I am today, not what I did in the past." Then run. You no longer need to seek a pattern of behavior. They've revealed it to you. They are angry you are denying them access to using you, showing they intended to damage you again. This is not a judgment on them. It's completely possible. The problem is not narcissism, just indifference to you. As far as denying themselves anything, or whatever the reason, and they do not have the same ideal of what intimacy looks like. Maybe someday they will learn and be worthy of another. However, they have made it clear you are not the person that will inspire them to change. You can't change them, so since you can only change yourself, that will be the only path left to you. This will happen regardless of your decision to change or leave. In staying, you will slowly move parts of your personality in the closet, not realizing, since they will not communicate, you have no idea what they value. You will be assuming a lot. Soon, you will feel your identity tied to theirs, in doubt of ability to think independently. Their world is so alien to you that you might feel like you're in some make-believe world that only he seems to thrive in, or she. In the end, you can only change yourself, either by abandoning yourself or accepting you have value, and just not to the person you assigned the gift of an intimate relationship to. If a relationship fails, it doesn't have to be a judgment on you or him. Don't own what is not yours. Look at your actions. Fix what you think is a problem. Not for them, but to avoid finding someone that would treat you like that again. Value yourself enough to make the best you that's possible, regardless of who you assign fault with. It doesn't matter. The only thing that does is you can only change yourself. If a lesson is to be learned, it must be focused on what you can change. It's not about blaming the victim, but avoiding being the victim again. It's just that simple. Consider it like remodeling a house. You do it to increase the value. Are you less valuable than a thing? If you see no value in yourself, then it's possible that is the first place to look. The next would be those you surround yourself with. This tells others what your values are. If you sell presents for fun or envy, then can you fault those that place a higher value looking elsewhere? Beyond that, you will need to use your creativity. The answer is in your learned behavior rules. Those are only two of the possibilities that seem a constant. For women, you should consider, what have you been told? What did your parents tell your brothers? Were they in conflict? Did your parents shield you, insisting you be treated different? Do not blame them for failing. Let them own that. Just understand this might be an area you should look at. Just because your parents were rigid and sent the wrong message that women have less value does not mean you must own it. Just challenge the rule. Adjust it in some way. Eventually, it will just leave. Society seems to create this insane conflicting messages. Women are three different souls, and I must ask those that believe this, or would tell a son this, just how many disposable souls do they think God put on earth for them to damage? Women can see those that the father, brother, or others would disrespect. Is it any wonder, seeing the woman they label as disposable and realize they are no different, begin to doubt their own self-worth? Do not do this to be worthy of a man. Do it so that a man is worthy of you. You are not an object to be used. The older generation might have created a sick illusion of disposable souls that choose to be used. You should understand it's not a choice by them or you. It's because of what you were told and they were told, or shown what you were worth by the imposed rules of society or your own family's coping behavior. Understand, men often want whatever they can get for the cheapest price they can get. But women that value themselves get to choose the men they tolerate. Never forget you go through 9 months of pregnancy, and while I'm a man, I am relatively sure no man could possibly understand just how much strength that requires. I'm not just talking of the delivery. That is something no man can do for you. The last thing you need is a man you must raise as well. Raising children is enough of a chore. Society might tell you the opposite, and while what I say is the same result, the difference is you understand your worth is the reason you should do anything. Your body might lack the strength, but even the weakest man's soul can be stronger than the strongest, privileged, pampered soul. Often those might be the most visually appealing, but the least worthy of you. If anyone deserves to have the choice, it's you.